Welcome to the Native Diamond Podcast.
Oh, shit! What you waiting for?
Please don't forget to like the video, hit subscribe, ring the bell. That way you're notified every time I drop a new episode of Native Diamond Podcast. Feel free to drop a comment because I love hearing feedback from you guys. Without further ado, let's get into today's episode. What's going on, my dudes? Seth Mick here. This is Native Diamond Podcast. And on today's show, I have a special guest. She's a journalist for Distorted Sound, amongst other articles. She specializes in music, plus queer and race relations. She's an awesome content creator and your favorite emo. Give it up for Yasmine Summan on the show.
Thank you. That was really nice.
I've been practicing. How I start off every episode, I do icebreaker questions. I'm going to give you 25 off the top. You just say the first thing that comes to mind. Don't put a lot of thought into this.
Okay, go on. I'm ready.
All right, cool. We'll start it off. What is your favorite My Chemical Romance song?
Mama or Sharpest Lives.
Ben Bruce or Lee Malia?
Ben Bruce.
Song that you know all the lyrics to?
Anything off Collide with the Sky by Pierce the Veil or anything off Disgusting by Bear 2.
Sick Breakdown or Sick Solo?
Sick Breakdown, because I feel like a solo can sometimes sound really cheesy and corny if it's done in such a like generic dad rock way. Even the terrible Crabcore breakdown from 2010 still slap. Like Attack Attack aren't a good band, but they slap because the breakdowns go hard.
What is your favorite song to cry to?
I'll give you my top 5. The Sky Under the Sea by Pierce the Veil, anything by Eden, but more specifically either Sex or XO by Eden. Oh god, there's so many. Sick and Disgusting by Bear 2, Crucify Me or Don't Go by Brim With Horizon, and oh my god, I was thinking about this yesterday. Or Hospital for Souls by Brim With Horizon.
Dude, Hospital for Souls got me through some tough shit.
Or anything by Architects. That's just another one. I just like anything by Architects will make me cry.
If you were Superwoman, what would be your kryptonite?
There's so many things. People who are mean to me, that would be it. I just crumble.
So this is going to be I finished the lyrics. If you can't, that's fine. I'm 2 quarters and a heart down, and I don't want to forget how your voice sounds. These words are all I have, so I write them blank.
Oh, no, I can't. I don't know. I feel bad.
You're good.
Oh, who is it?
It was Dance Dance, Fall Out Boy.
Oh, okay. I don't like Fall Out Boy that much.
Fair enough. Socks or no socks?
Socks.
Best video game franchise?
Borderlands.
Nice. That's a good one. Who would win in a fight? Corey Taylor or Tim Lambesis?
I feel Corey Taylor is a lot more scarier, so I'm going to go with Corey Taylor.
Falling in Reverse or Escape the Fate?
Escape the Fate, because they're not as controversial.
Best Tony Hawk Pro Skater game?
All of them. All of them, but maybe 2. That one was good.
Worst American food by far?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I've been to New York and LA. I've been to New York twice. So many favorites. But I do not understand beef jerky, and it makes me physically angry. I'm like, what? Like, why? It's bad. It's so bad. I've tried to love it. I like Gatorade. I like Twinkies and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Draw the line of beef jerky.
Circle Pit or Wall of Death?
I am too small, so a circle pit is more beneficial for me. If this is a song I really like, I will dive headfirst into the Wall of Death and die. Like, both equally are good.
Dance Gavin Dance or Circa Survive?
Dance Gavin Dance. I love the new record. It's one of my favorite records they put out. I only found them recently as well, but like they top everything for me. I love them so much. Paramore
or The Used?
I'm going to say Paramore only because I feel like Hayley Williams, I don't want to say she like paved the way. There was definitely women before her, but like she had a very influential impact on women getting into alternative music. I love Hayley Williams. I would die for her.
Warped Tour or Ozfest?
UK festival culture is so different to US culture. So like for me, neither. Because I've been to Warped Tour, my friends have been to Ozfest, and Slam Dunk and Download so much better. Download is like a Warped Tour, but you can camp. You get to live and breathe that for 3 days, and it's insane. So neither, I'm sorry.
Describe the best day in your opinion.
Like a typical day for me is like writing articles and stuff. So I say like I get a good interview with a band and I'm really happy with it, and that I wake up at a normal time and I don't feel really tired, and I have a nice breakfast that I don't burn because I can't cook, and I have a tweet that like does some numbers. For me, it's getting to talk to people. Every day is different. Like I've never had a day that's similar. Probably just, getting good work, getting response online, and eating lots of food. I love food.
Rick or Morty?
Morty, because I feel like he's the underdog and like he's underappreciated, and I love Morty. I relate to Morty on so many levels. I am a ball of anxiety, so Morty and me, we're cinematic parallels, you know?
Favorite 80s movie?
I'm a music journalist, and my best friend is an entertainment journalist, and she like loves movies. She'll write about movies. She does reviews all the time for cinemas. I don't know movies at all. Like, I only watched Pulp Fiction and The Breakfast Club this year. I'm out of touch. I only know like really terrible 2000 movies, you know, like disaster movie and scary movie and stuff, and American Pie and House Bunny. That's what I grew up on.
What's something that everyone loves, but you're just like, I hate that shit?
Like, I try with music, I try to be really open and stuff, but there's one album by Fall Out Boy, it's Mania. Like, I don't mind Fall Out Boy, I think they're very influential and they, you know, had their time, but Mania by Fall Out Boy, I just personally hate it. Not because they changed, because I just hate the sound of the album. And every time anyone's like, I love that new album, I'm like, I want to die. Like, that just, no. Never.
I'm glad you have like an opinion, because I feel like I run into a lot of yaysayers and they're just like, everyone just likes everything. I'm like, you can't just like everything. Like, there's gotta be something that you can't stand.
There's albums, like most of the time I'm quite open with music and I like everything, but there's always those albums that are like,
Low gutturals or high screaming?
low gutturals, all the time low gutturals. Caleb showed me I used to pull low gutturals on Attack Attack, and oh my god, they kill me. I love them so much. But high screams, great. Low gutturals, like, it's hard to do high screams, but to really go that low in your belly and in your gut blows my mind.
Best emo band ever?
I think it depends on the era. Either Sunny Day Real Estate or The Used or Mayday Parade for like early emo. But if you're talking like new wave emo, I'd say the likes of like MCR and stuff, because they're not, you know, typical emo, but they're kind of rebranding emo. So
Most annoying band ever?
oh, I feel like I'll be like, I don't know. No, I know. Blood on the dance floor. Oh my god, stop existing. Stop it. I just want Darby Vanity to stop. Whatever he's doing, Darby Vanity, please stop. I'm tired of it.
Last question. Worst subgenre of metal?
Pirate metal. I don't get it. Not like I'm from Birmingham, and that's like the home of metal, because Ozzy Osbourne and all them like came from here. Over the summer we had like an expose of like the home of metal, and it showed you the wall of like different types of metal, black metal, death metal, and then all the like, you know, metalcore, deathcore and stuff like that, how it kind of came from that. Pirate metal, Celtic metal, Viking metal, there's a line, and maybe I don't get it.
No Amon Amarth for you?
See, everyone loves them, and they're one of the few bands I'm like, okay, they're catchy, they're good, but I think they make it, mainstream, and they make it like for a wider demographic. They're just that token band where everyone's like, oh yeah, they do that. Like, it's them. But it's more like smaller bands who try and appeal to that sound, where I'm like, it doesn't sound good when you do it. Please stop. They are the only exception.
That pretty much does it for my icebreakers, so thanks for playing. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. That was fun. I feel like I did well.
What have you been up to lately with everything going on? Quarantine, COVID?
Because I just graduated university, so like I was doing that until the end of April, and I was being a journalism BA graduate, which was cool. I got to like make a magazine about queer culture, but it was more to do with like queer representation in media. You have to create a thesis, and my thesis was that LGBT magazines don't represent the LGBT community in 2020. They only favour certain aspects. So I made a magazine that was all about underground queer culture in 2020, and it was really fun. I got to work with some drag queens, some asexual people, some polyamory people, lots of fun stuff, and I'll probably publish it after I've, you know, got my marks back. But I did that, and then now that's over, I'm just kind of throwing myself into music. So I'm a music journalist. I freelance for a bunch of different publications. Distorted Sound is the biggest one. I also work for 3 Songs and Out, and we're just launching projects at the moment. So 3 Songs and Out is starting a project called Into the Scene, which is where we specifically focus and give like feature level articles to local bands who are like breaking through the scene and doing their own thing. And this can be bands that have literally just started and have one single, but we think that they're really amazing. They represent something that the scene is lacking, or they're just really cool people. We've reached out to a bunch of local bands, and it's been really fun to work with them and see that like even at the lowest levels, you know, there is such amazing talent that isn't breaking through. And especially now, you know, with COVID-19, the music industry has fallen on hardships, but especially local bands have fallen on absolute hardships and don't have labels to fall back on. So they're well and truly stuffed. So we want to help them. And then with Distorted Sound, we're just doing album reviews, articles. I recently interviewed Ask Alexandria, and that was really fun. And we reviewed their album. Next up will be Palais Royale. We're reviewing their new album that's coming out soon. And yeah, I'm just covering all things music and stuff. And I also do YouTube and whatnot and TikTok, which is taking off for me. And I don't know why, but here we are.
I feel like I'm too old for the TikTok thing, or else.
No one is old for TikTok. I shouldn't be with the e-kids on TikTok because I'm like 21, but I am. And I've got like almost, I think I'm 40K away from an overall 1 million likes on TikTok just from doing some emo e-kid stuff. Nobody is too old for TikTok. I've seen grandmas in there. I've seen people in jail.
Really?
TikTok.
What?
So.
That's crazy. Well, I'm insecure because I'm 29. So I'm like, I'm in that I need to get my shit together phase.
No, 29 is the new 21. I don't know what you're on about.
All right, fair enough. Have you been checking out any podcasts or let's just say music in particular, anything you've been stuck on?
In terms of podcasts, I listen to State of the Scene because my friend Marcos is part of that, and I love State of the Scene and they're always great. I also listen to My Top 5 by Fleur Shomo, Caleb Shomo's wife from Betty. And yeah, I really like what she does. She interviews a lot of bigger bands because obviously she has the connections, but she's just so great and I just love her. And then in terms of music, I've been listening to, lots. I've been listening to Dance Gavin Dance new album. Alexandria's new album. I've been listening to Mother by In This Moment. Phenomenal album, absolutely amazing. Back as well, and been listening to a lot of like old school throwback stuff. So a lot of Pierce the Veil, Selfish Machines, and Bertie's Disgusting, and There Is a Hell by Bring Me the Horizon, because that turns 10 this year, and I was 11 when that came out. So I feel like I've lived through that era. So yeah, just some old throwbacks and some new stuff that's coming out.
Yeah, I've been seeing a lot of Pierce the Veil on your social media stuff.
I do love them. Don't really love what's going on with them right now. Kind of stuff, because I love their old stuff and it's nostalgic for me, but it's really hard to support a band that don't want to address their own controversies. And as a journalist, I can't be biased. Obviously, I love them and I respect them, but if they're going to continue with that kind of behaviour, I don't know if I can support them in the next decade or next future of their album or whenever it comes out. I just very torn at the moment.
Can you speak on that a little bit about the controversy, just for people that don't know?
Basically, there was some allegations against the drummer. This is general knowledge, so I don't feel like I'm spilling or causing any drama or anything. There was allegations put against the drummer in 2018 or 2017, and they kind of went on a hiatus and said, we're gonna sort this out, don't worry. And they made a huge statement, and then they deleted that statement. And it's, I'm pretty sure Alt Press, Rock Sound, everybody covered it, so there are articles to read up about it. But they've come back now, and they're like, hey, here's, I think they did it like a Hold On Till May Zoom, cover, and they came back, and everyone was like, hey, you're going to address what's going on, and they've kind of been silent. Obviously, maybe if they bring up the new album, then they'll address it, but I'd like to see them address it. I hate the idea of them just being like, yeah, we're going to sweep this one under the rug, because I don't think it'll ever go away. Like true fans of the band will remember, and I think that's the most important demographic. But yeah, allegations against them that they haven't addressed over like 3 years, and it's disappointing because I love them so much, and Collide with the Sky was the album for me. Like, it changed everything for me. It's what got me into alternative music. So it's hard as like a long time fan to kind of balance my journalistic unbias with my like die-hard love for them. And I'm at this crossroad where I'm like, I love you so much and you mean so much to me, but this is problematic and I can't support that. So yeah,
I've been kind of seeing that with like Falling in Reverse lately. All those allegations with the gang rape with Roddy Radke, and a lot of fans are like kind of speaking out, and they're like, we don't support them anymore.
I didn't know about the gang rape, but I remember when he got into a spat with Elijah Daniel on Twitter and said some transphobic things.
Oh man, oh yeah, okay, I remember that.
Yeah, and then I remember back in the day when I think it was in a Brian Stars interview, it's still on YouTube, the video is still up there. Not in a Brian Stars interview, it was just a clip from an interview that doesn't exist anymore, where he dropped the N-word, and it was like, oh. And I could, like, right, if that was 10 years ago, which it was, I could be like, okay, if you're not doing that anymore, I could understand you probably thought it was a word, but because he's still so problematic, it's hard to be like, well, do you really think it's a word, or do you actually not care about, not offending other people and not being rude?
And especially because everything's on social media, you can't really get away with a lot of things that you probably could have back in the day.
I think that's a double-edged sword, though, like the whole cancel culture thing. I think on one end, it is important to hold people accountable for their actions, and like we've reached a point now where like social media is a tool that anybody can educate themselves on, and minorities in general now have a platform to speak about issues. So it's not like people don't know. Whereas 10 years ago, minorities issues existed, but people didn't have the same platform in society. People didn't care about them enough to want to hear their issues. Like you never saw, for example, there's a magazine that launched in 2015 in London called Galdem, and it's specifically for women of colour, trans and non-binary people. As a journalism student, that the market for that did not exist 10 years ago. Like so many magazines were very much white dominated, and the industry itself, just speaking as a journalist, has rapidly changed in just a short amount of 10 years, because even the BBC, which is like the government broadcast in the UK, they've had to put up job listings like, hey, we want this radio presenter, but they have to be a person of colour, because we kind of don't have many people of colour in our line of work. And that's kind of been the whole of journalism for 10 years. So, woo! Yeah, it's kind of, with cancel culture, it's a double-edged sword. On one hand, like, it's really important to hold people accountable and raise issues, but when cancel culture gets too out of hand and doesn't acknowledge that it needs to be situational, I think fall into the trap of going, oh yeah, someone who said the F slur once when they were 11 is the same as a serial rapist. Like, that doesn't mesh, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. So I have to ask you this question because, you know, obviously you live in the UK. Do you think that like America is more progressive, like we'll just say like towards people of color? Do you think we're ahead of you guys?
You're not ahead of us. Not to be like, right, the UK is just, I said this to my friend who lives in America as well. I said the UK is just America times 2 electric boogaloo. We are America of Europe. We are just you, but like smaller, and in Europe, you know, Americans came from the UK and whatever. I can only really compare from my experience in the UK. I have experienced hate crimes similar to like what you get in America, but the laws in the UK are more protective towards people of colour. We have a more balanced ratio of people of colour in Parliament. We didn't for a really long time, and we still don't. You've got the likes of like David Lammy and Diane Abbott, I think it is, I can't say her name, but they're people in Parliament who are people of colour, and they actively speak out about these issues, and it's a lot better than, you know, from what I've seen over there, you guys have a lot of white people in government, and that's really it. Even on our right-wing side, there are a lot of people of colour, or there is a more increasing amount of people of colour, queer people and women on the right-wing side of things. In the UK, it's like a more watered-down version, but in America, I definitely think you guys, your whole freedom of speech thing is so wild. Like, we don't have speech. We do. It's very, like, okay, so the law in the UK comes under the Human Rights Bill, which was in 1994, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. But that says that you have the freedom of expression as long as that doesn't conjunct with the law. And the law is on speech that you can't, you know, defame or say anything or do anything that is abusive towards someone. I'm, you know, misquoting this badly, but you can't say something that is defamatory, that brings down a person's character, or is genuinely seen to be in spite, you know, or judges someone on their appearance, on their sexuality, their race, their gender, even because we had an incident, it was just like in the early 2000s, where someone was killed for being a goth. So now that kind of comes into it as well. So if like alternative people are attacked just for the way that they look, that's counted as a hate crime. So here it's a lot more like, you can say that, but you will get arrested if it's mean. It's getting better, but it's not great.
Since we're kind of on that subject, and, you know, the whole reason that we kind of linked up, we wanted to talk about PC culture and music and if it's good or not. So I'll go ahead and pose the question to you. What is your opinion on PC culture and music?
Like I said, with cancel culture, PC culture is a double-edged sword. So you find now people will be like, oh, I miss when like the likes of Franz and Ronnie Radke would say this and do this. And I think when people look at it, they look at it through rose-coloured glasses. Because don't get me wrong, I think Franz, of all people, and this is a controversial thing, I think he's okay. I think anytime he said anything homophobic, it's been used as a device against homophobic slurs. So it would always be in a context of, yeah, here's the F slur, don't be homophobic, in his music. So it was always something used as part of the song. It was never just like, I hate gay people. But I think people often look back at the scene with rose-coloured glasses. PC culture is good and bad. It's good because PC culture has come from, you know, generally an increase of people of colour, women, and minorities in general in music, which there's still even not that much. I think according to womeninmusic.org, only 6% producers are women in Canada and the US from 2019, and only 22% of women from 2012 to 2017 were were featured in top 600 songs of Billboard. Like that's not even half of women on the Billboard top 600. That was just at 22%. So it's still increasing. I think PC culture helps because now I finally have a space where I won't be degraded. I won't be just generally treated like crap because of the way I look, because of who I am, because of my gender, my race, my sexuality. But I think people do take it too far. I think, if you look back at anything from 2010, for example, this isn't to call them out, this is literally just for an example. Dude from Hollywood Undead, who isn't in the band anymore, he had a song called Dead in Ditches, which is about wanting gay people to die. Well, it just says the F slur a bunch and talking about how faggot snitches, I'd say that as a queer woman, how faggot snitches should die, basically. As a queer person, listening to that was, fun. Or even if you look at, so the tone of the scene 10 years ago, women weren't as prominent in music. We've always existed, but I think now, because of the Me Too movement, which is part of PC culture. Because of the Me Too movement, women get treated a lot better. There's been a raising of awareness towards the fact that, women, even in small microaggressions, get treated like crap. Even if you look at Ask Alexandria, You Stupid Fucking Whore, Capture the Crown, Or This a Knife, This is a Knife, that song is so degrading towards women, but so many bands wrote like that, and none of them perform those songs anymore because they don't want to degrade women and know better, and I think the scene in general has moved past it. So it's a double-edged sword. It works and it doesn't. Some people take it way too far and say, why did you say that 10 years ago? And I'm like, because the scene was completely different 10 years ago.
I kind of see it a lot more prominent in rap. I feel like rape culture is a lot more acceptable in rap. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's interesting you say that because there's a smaller band coming up. Well, it's two of them. They're called Nova Twins, and they are a duo female force of black women in music, and they're under 333 Records, which is Jason Butler from Fever 333 and Let Live. It's his record company, his record label, and he signs artists like that. They're very much like The Prodigy meets punk meets like that 90s rap style. And they wrote a song called Bullet that has a verse that says bitches and hoes, diamonds and something. I talk about my dick because my brain is fucking slow. And it's all about how rappers constantly degrade women in their verses. I think it's a part of culture. Now it's not acceptable, only because these issues have always existed, and it's wrong to say like, oh yeah, 10 years ago this wasn't a thing. It was a thing, but people didn't care. Society didn't have the resources that social media has given us, where now everybody gets a chance to say how they feel. And because of that, people of color, people like me can say, yeah, I was verbally abused on the street for being, Asian, and that did happen, and it happens a ton. Or I get, sexually harassed at shows as a woman, and we can have that conversation. Whereas 10 years ago, we didn't have such a worldwide resource for everybody to speak their opinion. For me, it's like, if rappers don't do that anymore, cool. If rappers did that 10 years ago, problematic, but if they know better now, that's all that matters to me.
Speaking of like being a person of color, what is your ethnicity?
I'm mixed race. So my mom, she is from Wales, she is white, and my dad is from India, he is Asian. People get really confused when they look at me. I don't really understand because I'm very light-skinned. I think if I was a bit darker-skinned, and I've only got light-skinned in recent years because I don't leave the house anymore, but I used to be a lot of a deeper skin tone when I was younger. People look at me and they're like, you're not white, but you're not something. So I think most of the time, especially now I've got my black hair back predominantly, like when I'm not wearing makeup, I look a lot more Asian. I have very Asian features. I have Asian eyes. I have like an Asian nose, stuff like that. But yeah, I'm mixed race.
Sorry for asking that, if that offended you. I'm half Filipino. I'm a Navy baby, so.
No.
But no, I totally get it because, I got kind of harassed when I was younger. I went to are you familiar with like rednecks? I'm sure you encountered some. Okay. Well, I went to a school full of them, and I got kind of bullied for not being like white and rednecky. If I had a white girlfriend or whatever, I would get harassed a lot. Did you encounter anything like that in your life growing up?
Yeah, so I had a really hard kind of personality crisis when I was younger because I was never Asian enough to be friends with all the Asian girls, but I was never white enough to be friends with the white people. So like when I did hang out with white people, they'd be like, oh yeah, Yasmine's our Asian friend, and I'd be like, but my mom is a very white woman. And then when I hung out with Asian people, they're like, yeah, but you wouldn't get it because like, you're not fully Asian. Because like obviously I have both cultures in my family. Like my mom and dad, they love Asian food and we love Asian clothes, but like obviously we live in like a white suburb, so like we kind of engage with that culture a lot. But I think people don't understand. I am both. Like, that's been the biggest thing for me. There's always been people saying, yeah, but you're not fully this, you're not fully that. It's like, no, I'm both at the same time. Like, I don't just switch it off. I'm not Hannah Montana. Like, I am both at the same time. So yeah, it was not fun, but there are a lot of, I think I'm quite lucky because I was in high school in like the 2010s, kind of 2013, 14. So society was becoming more progressive towards mixed race people and biracial people and, you know, all that stuff. So I did meet other people like me and we'd be like, it's us. We're not one thing and we're not the other thing. We're both. And yeah.
You know, the whole Me Too movement was very strong, and I did a little bit of research, but I'm probably not as knowledgeable as you. But I guess that kind of came around 2006. Do you think things have drastically changed since then?
Even though the Me Too movement came around in 2006, I don't think it had the platform it did until the likes, like Tumblr is such a strange place, but it really helped like third wave feminism find its footing, and that obviously, you know, caused its own breed of social justice warrior elitism. For the most part, I think social media helped the Me Too movement. It really gave it its backing, because I think on social media people aren't afraid to say how they feel because they're behind a screen, so they know that like, oh yeah, if I said it in person or if I brought it up in my work and I had those social barriers, it would be a lot harder. I think in the past 10 years alone, it has become so much easier. Still a lot of problems, but it's become a lot easier to be a woman. There's still issues of representation, like for example, I made a video on this, representation in headlining festivals and, you know, festivals in general, because over here we have Reading and Leeds, and this year my friend Lucy McCourt brought this up. There weren't enough women on the lineup. There was not a single woman headlining. There was no women on the main stage. There was like 20-30% of women on the full-on festival lineup, and my friend Naomi made a spreadsheet of the year of all the festivals lined up, and most of them had like 10 to 15 acts in a massive 3-day, like hundreds of acts, hundreds of things going on, and they had like 10 to 15 acts. So it's got better. I find now I meet a lot of men who will always ask me stuff first, and like people think it's awkward to be like, oh, can I, you know, am I okay to touch you here? But I would rather someone ask me than just do it, you know? Like,
Yeah.
grab my leg rather than be like, am I okay to do this? And I'm like, yeah, go ahead, it's cool. I think society has become more progressive. There's definitely been a massive backlash though, and a lot of unearthing of people's sexism. The general narrative towards women and the conversations we're having have created such safe space for women. It's still hard, but we're getting better.
Are you familiar with like the CJ McCreery thing that happened with Lorna Shore and he ended up getting fired from the band?
I heard of it. I'm not a big fan of Lorna Shore. My friend loved them. She basically said that he did something problematic and he sexually assaulted some women. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he kind of got in trouble. Mainly it was Nicole Garvey, his girlfriend that he dated when she was basically a minor. He like filmed some really disgusting stuff, like tying her up and peeing on her in the bathroom. Basically, like when the stuff started to surface, Lorna Shore got rid of him. Do you think that you're going to see that a lot more often now? Like bands are just going to be like, all right, we have to move on because we can't have that attention.
Oh yeah, like the whole of 2017 was like the unearthing of pedophiles in bands. I think so many years. The culture in music has always been very weird towards women. So like I said, even bands like Asking Alexandria, and I love Asking Alexandria. I have their shirts framed over there. I love them. I think they're an amazing band, and I think they've matured so much. And they even said themselves, like, we don't play those songs anymore because we're not those people. But they said, "You stupid fucking whore," you know. They degraded women because it was the narrative towards women at that time. We only got rights like 50, 60 years ago in the UK. People forget that.
Yeah.
But like, women did not have, in the UK, women didn't have rights to their own bank accounts in the 60s. Like, society is rapidly progressing. But the narrative towards women in music has always been a sticky one. I find that, like, Hollywood in general has always treated women like crap, i.e. the Harvey Weinstein incident and so many people like that. So in 2017, you had the likes of Brand New, Moose Blood, so many bands that had been outed because women finally felt, because of the Me Too movement, finally felt like they had a safe space to be like, actually, when I was 15, I dated a guy who was like 25 in this band, and he should have known better. So yeah, definitely now, I think bands are more careful towards how they interact with their fans. I think they second guess and consider more about how like they interact with people they're in relationships with, and just in general. It won't become more of a thing where bands get outed. I think it'll be more of a thing that bands are more cautious and more thoughtful with how they engage with their audience.
With the rape culture and rap music and stuff like that, like why is that encouraged so hard?
I think just generally, because I've done a lot of research into like queer rights, the tone and narrative towards minorities in general has always been very one-sided for such a long long time. Like Martin Luther King and his whole thing was 60, 50 years ago. My dad is 61 now. When he was born, he couldn't marry my mom. Like in that time, legally, interracial marriages weren't a thing. And then I think when he was like 10 or 11, it got legalized in the US. Obviously, that's, different here, but it was still seen badly upon. And my mom and dad got a lot of shit when they got together because he is a very brown man and she's a very white woman, and that just didn't mesh with people's rhetorics and how they think. But I think it's just always kind of had that tone and that narrative towards women, queer people, people of color. There's always been one side that finally, when we finally get rights, when we finally get a platform, it's changed. I think that's why, like, now we finally get a platform to talk about, being mixed race. Now I finally get a platform to say, hey, when you catcall me, that's actually fucking disgusting. Or, hey, as a queer person, being a gay best friend isn't a tokenism. It's not something that's cool. I'm a normal human being. I deserve to be more than that. So I think as society has progressed, as we've finally got rights, and as more in popular culture, as more queer people, as more women have succeeded and got to these places and fought for us in these spaces, we've finally been able to have these conversations. So I think it's always kind of been that behavior, like rap, music, society has always had that narrative towards women, towards queer people. Rap is also, I found a lot of like 90s rap to be very homophobic.
Yeah.
A lot of like 2010 to early 2000s emo metalcore music always dropped the F slur. God knows why. All of them were straight white men, but threw it out like candy. So I think for such a long time, there's always been one perception deeply ingrained into society that finally now we have the spaces. It's changed everything. It's changed the narrative. It's completely turned things on their heads, really.
I want to ask you this. People that conduct in that type of behavior, do you think they get it from like their parents, or do you think it's through culture?
That's a good question because, funnily enough, I'm raised in a traditional Asian household when I was younger. So I was raised to think that like women belonged in the kitchen, that arranged marriages were all that I was known for, that gay people deserve to die, which clearly, as you can tell by the queer flags over there, did not work on me. I'm not the traditional Asian daughter, not getting an arranged marriage, and a raging bisexual. I don't think it's upbringing alone. I think if you're like 13 to 14, obviously your parents, if you're still living with them, have an influence on you, and you can be brainwashed into thinking that's the only way, especially if you're from a sheltered environment. But it's all about, like, when I got older, I believed that, women belonged in the kitchen and whatever when I was like 13 or 14. And then as I started to meet people and learn different things, and I went on social media was such a pivotal thing for me, because as I started to go on social media, I went on Tumblr, I went on Twitter, I met other people. Instead of being stubborn and going, I'm not going to listen to your experience because it does not work with my experience and I don't like your opinion, I listened and I educated myself. So I don't think it's just because a lot of people use that excuse, that's just how I was raised. Yeah, but you can actively, especially now with the wealth of social media and all of its knowledge and the internet in general, you can just Google like, slavery, queer rights, women's rights, sexism, and get so much information. So I don't think blaming it on your upbringing alone is good enough. I think you need to understand that we are all responsible to educate ourselves. Like, we are all responsible for not being ignorant, for knowing what is right or wrong. And especially adults, like teenagers, I have some kind of like sympathy with, because you are being raised in that hostile environment. You only know things from your parents. But when you're a grown adult who should know better, who has resources, who works with different people, like, especially now, I work with so many different people from so many different backgrounds because I work in music. Everybody in their life wants to do music. So I get to work with all the kinds of people. I meet new people every day. And, even if you don't, even if you're from a sheltered area where it's just old white men, you have the internet.
Have you worked any other job besides journalism, or did you just straight jump into that?
Well, I do part-time bar work. I love bartending. Bartending is fun because I love alcohol. But yeah, I worked in a nightclub for 2 years, and that was wild. That was its whole a bucket of weirdness. Nightclubs in the UK, because we're like, drinking age here is 18. So like, can you imagine freshmen drinking? That is wild. But yeah, I worked in a nightclub, I bartend. I've always watched YouTube, I've always engaged with YouTube, and that was what got me into journalism, because I'm just really nosy and I love to tell people my opinion. I used to do YouTube when I was 14, and I'd make like DIY videos. I don't do that anymore, but I think it's just always something I've really, really loved. Like, even when I've done other things, it's always been intertwined into that. So I've managed social media accounts, I've wrote short stories, and it's always been at the heart of what I do is always finding out information, regardless of what I'm using or what medium I'm on. It's just, I guess I've always liked it. I'm just really nosy.
The reason I ask is because, like, I'm a chef myself, and I basically grew up in the kitchen, and I see a lot of like sexual harassment. It seems acceptable. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
I worked in a nightclub, like I said, and I work in bars, and it happens a lot. Like, people see a pretty girl and they're like, "Hello, Mrs. Bartender, I want to grab your boobs," and you're like, "I will put you in the face. My boss said I can." And the nightclub I used to work at, like, it was so fun. They let you wear whatever you wanted to wear. Like, you could show up to work in like a onesie. It was so wild. But that's because it was an emo alternative nightclub, and it was kind of a community, so everybody was friends with each other. So I would just show up in like a tank top and some shorts and some fishnets, and people would try and sexually harass me. But the only thing I found is, because I was with other women in that space, the first thing that would happen is if anybody tried to grab my breasts or like anybody said anything to me, my female manager would march over and scream in their face and then be like, "Get the fuck out of my club." For me, I definitely think, especially in like catering and general hospitality, it exists. But now that more women are getting jobs in those spaces, it's becoming less of a problem because we can stand up for each other.
The female involvement in music, do you think it's getting better, in your opinion?
It's getting better because we're breaking away from a narrative that has been set, and a precedent that has been set for us, that we can only ever be like, you know, we can only ever write songs about heartbreak, we can only ever write songs that are like, you know, I always see bands, and this used to happen 10 years ago, and it made me want to rip my hair out, when male journalists would be like, "They're a Paramore-esque band," and it was like, no, they're not. They're just a woman. They're just someone called New Year's Day, a Paramore band, and Venom Prism, a Paramore sounding band. I was like, you just think that because she's a woman, which, like, don't get me wrong, Paramore, mwah, amazing, love Hayley, oh god, and I love those bands too. New Year's Day are amazing, Venom Prism are amazing, but they're amazing in their own right. So I don't think it's fair to call them Paramore because they're their own band. I think it's definitely improved. Like I said, womeninmusic.org, they have statistics about, you know, women in music in general, not just alternative music, but just generally in music. So I think it was 6% of producers in the US and America in 2019 were women. That's only 6% of producers. 22% of all women, like, on the charts from 2012 to 2017. Of 600 songs, only 22% of women, and only 12% were female songwriters. So it's definitely improving. I think women have always been in this industry. Like, you've got the Riot Girl era, you've got the whole like dad metal, 80s glam metal, I should say, era. But women were there. It's just because of society's general narrative that was still sexist, that was still homophobic, that was still racist. It was harder for us to break into that industry. A great example of that, right? So rock music came from Black people, and we kind of just pretend that that wasn't a thing. So rock music, it came from rhythm and blues and gospel and choir and stuff like that. And the likes of Sister Rosetta Tharpe, who she was like one of the pioneers, or is considered one of the pioneers for rock music. She was a Black woman. She pioneered rock music. But when you think of like classic rock, you don't think of women, you don't think of Black people, and you don't think of queer people. You just think like Elvis Presley, the Beatles, and it's like, why? Because society in general never gave, you know, people of color, queer people, and women those spaces, and now we finally do. It's getting so much better. There's women in hardcore, there's women in death metal, women in all aspects of music, and it's so fun. It's so great to just not be, you know, the sad, angry, like, oh, we only do this one thing. Like, no, women can do anything in music, and it's phenomenal to see.
Thanks for saying that, because I wanted to segue into a question really to ask you as a female. It's not really appropriate to say like a female fronted band nowadays. It offends people. How would you approach describing a band then?
You could say they're female inclusive, because saying female fronted makes it seem like bands can only be, you know, fronted by a female, and it's kind of that trope again of like just a band but they've got a woman on. Like, no, you would say female inclusive or queer inclusive or female representative, queer representative, POC representative. It's important to mention that. People have this issue with it, and my whole thing is it's important to mention that because, you know, there is still an absence of women, queer people, and people of color in music, and, you know, we still are considered a minority in society in general. Like, we still do have less rights and are treated terribly overall. But just making it like, yeah, they're a female band with one female artist who do female things. I'm like, okay, granted, there's a woman in the band, but also they are more than just being female. So I'd just say, if I was a journalist and I was writing an article, I'd be like, there's this band, they're from this area, they do this songs, and they are queer representative, female representative, POC representative.
Mhm.
Wow, there's also this other cool stuff about them. Unless that was like, so for example, Fever 323, that is the subject of what they do. Like, it's very much political and it talks about issues to do with people of colour and racism and discrimination. So you would mention that and be like, yeah, well, it's important that they're people of colour because, you know, they are obviously affected by what they're talking about in their music.
Yeah, I appreciate that because I support females. My wife, she's very like feminist. I support her. I'm not a female, so I can't speak for females. You know what I mean? That's kind of why I wanted to bring you on the show. You offer a very valid opinion. I'm going to try to start wrapping it up here. What would be like a main takeaway from this episode that you would want people to really just grasp onto?
It's just supporting female bands, people of colour and queer people in music because, you know, it's something we all have to do. It's a collective effort. Magazines, you know, headliners, festival organisers, I should say, everybody from every point of the industry needs to make that collective effort, from the people who listen to the music to the magazines who go, hey, here's this band that are growing that are people of colour, let's talk to them, to the festival organisers who are like, hey, here's this really popular band that's, you know, got queer people in it, let's pick them. But also at the same time, I guess the rounding off point about PC culture is a double-edged sword. It works and it doesn't. I think you can't always look back at everything and be like, well, they said this 10 years ago. Society was different 10 years ago. Our issues existed, but we never had the platform and the resource of education we do have to be more educated. Don't always look at the scene through rose-coloured glasses, because 10 years ago, I couldn't get a job in journalism. 10 years ago, men would degrade me in music. 10 years ago, Black people and people of colour in general weren't considered a thing in music. And music is so white male dominated now. It's so crucial to support these artists, not because they are queer people, people of colour and women, because they're just amazing artists in general. So, you know, PC culture does go too far sometimes, but at the same time, at the end of the day, PC culture has helped people like me get a job in this industry. Women like me, like mixed race people like me, queer people like me, have a space where we can exist. Because growing up, I wouldn't see people like me on magazines. I would see white dudes in bands. And now I do see people like me on magazines. So yeah, PC culture, like anything, like any kind of like whatever, can go too far. You know, I could say I don't like jam sandwiches or I want to kill a jam sandwich. Anything can go too far. But PC culture and just generally that kind of culture has so many benefits for minorities. So before you jump on the bandwagon like PC culture has gone too far, maybe consider your privilege and that, you know, the benefits of it are that I can finally have a place to exist in this industry now.
Do you feel like now you finally have your place and it feels solidified? You don't have to worry about any of that PC stuff anymore? Or do you feel more relaxed, I guess, is what I'm asking.
There's still a fight, still have like journalists making sexist comments towards me because I'm a woman. I know a lot of women in this industry have experienced the same thing as I have. But it's got a lot better over the years. Like I don't know, compared to 2 years ago, just even that, wouldn't experience what I experience now. I remember I watched an interview with Ash Costello, Maria Brinks and Lizzie Hale from New Year's Day in this moment and Hailstorm, and they were talking about breaking into the industry 10 years ago where record labels would basically tell them, oh, we've already got one female band, we don't need another. And it was like, it's definitely improved. I think now publications want me more because I have such a niche perspective, which isn't really that niche. Like, so many people go through this, but it's so new to this industry because it's been so white male dominated for so many years that now people like me can come into this industry and be like, hey, here's some like, you know, queer fronted bands that you didn't know that you should definitely check out because they are insane regardless of the fact that they're queer, but they're also queer. It's getting easier, but the fight is still there, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I understand. That's why I support Trivium. That's why I'm wearing the shirt, because like Matt, he's half Japanese and I relate to him on that level. I just feel like we have kind of the same kind of thing going on. Not because of that reason is why I like him, but I relate to him a lot more, which is why I get into it a lot more.
There's so many bands like that, and I think that's why it's so great to have more representative bands, because, you know, someone out there can be like, oh, I really love Fall Out Boy because it's Fall Out Boy, but also because of Pete Wentz, who's, I think he's half Black or half Mexican. I could be wrong. I might be both. But he's not just every other white guy. Or Guns N' Roses, for example, or Pierce the Veil, like, or P3, God, I could sit here all day. But seeing more of that in more diverse instances, like more Black women in punk music, more queer people in alternative music, it makes people like you and me go, oh, okay, like if they can do it, I can do it. Just like when I saw Hayley Williams in Paramore when I was like 12, I was like, oh, okay, so like women can exist in music without being degraded.
Mhm.
Cool, I'm gonna do that.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate all your time. I'm going to leave with one last question. I want to end it fun because we started off fun, right?
Okay.
All right, so you're on death row, okay? We're going to allow you one thing before your execution. You can have anything in the world. What would it be?
Oh, honestly, food. I want every food I could want. I mean, yeah, I'd obviously see my family and whatever, but I can see them, all the time. I don't get food in prison. I would get pizza, roast Sunday dinner, which is like a British thing. I would get chicken wings, the spiciest chicken wings. I would get all the fries, mainly McDonald's fries. And I would get loads of milkshake. I just get a whole buffet I could eat, and then I would die because food is the best.
Hey, that's a good way to go out for sure. Do you have any final thoughts you want to leave behind to the viewers before we head out?
I'm sorry for rambling so much. I feel like I should say that. It's a heated topic, so I hope people are just staying safe in quarantine and having a nice time.
No, you did great. I appreciate all the comments. I appreciate everything that you brought to the table. Maybe one day you'll be back on the show. Who knows?
I hope I'll be back.
There again, that was Yasmine Summan, journalist. She's doing a lot of great things. You guys need to go check her out. She's hilarious on Twitter. Emo Mom, go check her out.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll plug everything for you, and I'll drop links in the description so you guys can totally get to know her, become her friend. She's a great person. Thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you.
Well, that pretty much does it for today's episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Please like the video and subscribe. That way you don't miss a new episode of Native Diamond Podcast. And until I see you guys on a future video, shine on.
Hell yeah.